Mishpatim, Judgements. God's trumpet call presence encountered the living Messiah. Mishpatim. Mishpatim means judgments. In this parashah, there are 53 mitzvot and 23 imperative commandments and 30 prohibitions. These are for the exercise of righteousness and justice. Mishpat. Yeshuah Hamashiach declared justice to be the first of 3 weighty matters of the Torah. Yeshua said, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin. But you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. In this Torah portion, we also find the laws about Shemitah, the pilgrimage festivals, Israel's second and third vows to Jehovah, and the angel that was sent ahead of Israel by Jehovah. Adonai gave these commandments to bring separation between his people and the nations. Psalms 119 verse 10 says, "I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commandments." And Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 31 to 33, "Behold, the days are coming, says Jehovah, when I will make a covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers, in the day that I took them by hand, to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, says Jehovah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Jehovah. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people." The word for new or renewed, as is used in scripture, is feminine. The renewed covenant is instructions to the bride on how to prepare herself for the bridegroom by the Torah being written on our hearts. Righteousness and justice. The concepts of righteousness and justice stand like pillars at the center of Torah, Messiah, and the kingdom of heaven. Righteousness can be understood as the fulfillment of legal and moral obligations. It implies an exonerating verdict, not guilty. Justice can be understood as the fair administration of authority, deciding rightly between contestants, rightly rewarding and rightly punishing. God desires righteousness and justice more than sacrifice. When he chose Abraham, he knew that Abraham will pass on to the next generation after him to do righteousness and justice. Adonai appointed kings over Israel to dispense justice and righteousness. David reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and right for all his people. 2 Samuel chapter 8 verse 15. The psalmist says in Psalms chapter 99 verse 4, "The king is mighty, he loves justice. You have established equity in Jacob, you have done what is just and right." And in Proverbs chapter 29 verse 4 we find, "By justice a king gives a country stability, but those who are greedy for bribes tear it down." God's blessings came upon Israel when they were righteous and just. When Israel strayed away from the righteous path under the influence of wicked kings, the prophets rebuked the children of Israel. Prophet Isaiah states in Isaiah chapter 28 verse 17, "I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the level." Psalms chapter 72 verse 1 to 2 states, "Endow the king with your justice, O God, the royal son with your righteousness. May he judge your people in righteousness, your afflicted ones with justice." King Solomon was blessed with supernatural wisdom so that he can administer justice. Even Queen Sheba uttered a blessing for King Solomon. In 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 9 it states, "Blessed be the Lord your God who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, therefore he made you king to do justice and righteousness." The Lord will send the son of David to administer justice and righteousness, and this blessing will apply equally to King Messiah when he ruled from the throne of his father David, administering justice and righteousness. Prophet Jeremiah states in chapter 33 verse 15, "In those days and at that time I will make a righteous branch sprout from David's line. He will do what is just and right in the land. Then Zion will be rebuilt, as it says. Zion will be redeemed with justice and her repentant ones with righteousness." Isaiah chapter 1 verse 27. King Messiah and his government. In the Messianic era, Messiah will rule the earth. His decisions will not be based on what his ears hear or what his eyes see. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 32, 3 and 4 states, "He will delight in the fear of the Lord." He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Nations will come to learn the Torah from him. In Isaiah chapter 2 verse 4 we read, "He will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore." Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The seal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 7. Followers of Yeshuah Hamashiach have already submitted to the authority of future kingdom of Yeshua. As followers of Yeshuah Hamashiach, we observe the Torah standard of righteousness and justice as if King Messiah has already enforced them through his rule over the nations. Through studying the Torah, we learn his justice and righteousness. Commandments of the Torah help us understand the administration of King Messiah. Isaiah chapter 56 verse 1 says, "Whoever does justice draws the redemption closer." As it says, "Preserve justice and righteousness, for my salvation is about to come." The first ordinance. The bondservant. If you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to work 6 years. But in the 7th, he is to be given his freedom without having to pay anything. If he came single, he is to leave single. If he was married when he came, his wife is to go with him when he leaves. But if his master gave him a wife and she bore him sons and daughters, then the wife and her children will belong to the master and he will live by himself. When we see 6 days of years with the 7th day or years, we are seeing a mirror of the week of creation, 7 days. Nevertheless, if the slave declares, "I love my master, my wife and my children, so I don't want to go free," then his master is to bring him before God, and there at the door or doorpost, his master is to pierce his ear with an awl, and the man will be his slave for life. Exodus chapter 21 verse 2 to 6. The narrative is literal and it is telling us something on a deeper level. The Aleph Tav master is Yeshua. The Aleph Tav wife and children is his bride. It is common practice for New Testament authors to weave themselves a bondservant of Yeshuah Hamashiach. In Romans chapter 1 verse 1, Paul the apostle, a servant, a bondservant of Yeshuah Hamashiach, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 22, it says, he was called in the Lord as a bondservant. He is a freedman of the Lord. Likewise, he who was free was called is a bondservant of Messiah. In James chapter 1 verse 1, James, a bondservant of God and the Lord Yeshuah Hamashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Why is the ear of the bondservant is both through and oval? It is safe to say that a small amount of the bondservant's blood would drip down the doorpost. Through this process, he is entering into a lifelong covenant with his master. After the procedure, the Hebrew bondservant would cross over the threshold of his master's home and become adopted into the family. Another picture of being grafted in. Remember, the Aleph Tav was connected to the word ear. It is the ear of the Messiah that is being bored through. If we are going to hear correctly, then our ears must be circumcised. Consider Psalms chapter 40 verse 7 to 9. Sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears have been opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, I delight to do your will, O my Elohim, and your Torah is within my heart. In Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 10, to whom shall I speak and give warning, that they may hear? Indeed, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot give heed. Behold, the word of Jehovah is a reproach to them. They have no delight in it. First ordinance, the bondservant. In Acts chapter 7 verse 51 it says, you stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do you. In Matthew chapter 13 verse 15 it says, for the hearts of his people have grown dull, their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. Acts chapter 7 verse 51, behold, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot hear. Their ears were stopped with the filth of sin naturally, and they willfully stopped their ears like the adder, and so being unsanctified, they neither could hear nor desired to hear the word of Yahweh, as to understand it. The Hebrew word for ear, the numerical value is 58, reducing to a single digit 4. In its ancient form, Ozen would read, the leader will be cut off before he continues. The 7th letter of the alphabet is Zayin, which means to cut or cut off. Is it possible that what is being cut off is the foreskin of our hearts? If we want to hear what the Spirit of holiness is telling us, then our ears must be circumcised. Those who have ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the Messianic communities, is a phrase written to all 7 churches in the book of Revelation. 7th year. The Torah forbids slave owners from enslaving God's people permanently. 6 years that the Hebrew slave must labor symbolizes this current world during which the people of God suffer affliction, subjugation, and exile. The release of the Hebrew slave on the 7th year symbolized the redemption and the Messianic era. The liberation of the 7th year corresponds to the 7 days of the week. In Exodus chapter 23 verse 12 it says, 6 days you are to work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor. Sabbatical cycle of years also follows the same pattern. Exodus chapter 23 verse 11 says, on the 7th year you shall let your land rest and lie fallow. This pattern of time reflects the week of creation. In the Talmud, some of the sages viewed the 7 days of creation as a broad outline for human history, as the scripture says, for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes by. Psalms chapter 90 verse 4. They compared each of the 6 days to millennium of history. There were many opinions, but all agreed that the day of the Sabbath corresponds to the 7th millennium, the 1,000-year Messianic era. Apostles too held a similar view of redemptive history. The book of Hebrews compares the age to come to the Sabbath and speaks of the Sabbath as a foretaste of final salvation and Messianic era. According to the book of Revelation, there will be millennium of peace. Messiah will reign for 1,000 years. During the 1,000 years of adversary will be bound in chains. The apocryphal epistle of Barnabas, chapter 15, verse 5 says the following about the Sabbath and the 1,000 year of the Messianic era. Attend, my children, to the meaning of this expression. He finished in 6 days. This implied that the Lord will finish all things in 6,000 years. For a day is with him 1,000 years. And he himself testifieth, saying, behold, today will be as 1,000 years. Therefore, my children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, all things will be finished. And he rested on the 7th day. This means when his Son is coming, shall destroy the time of the wicked man and judge the ungodly, and change the sun and the moon and the stars. Then shall he truly rest on the 7th day. Moreover, he says, thou shalt sanctify it with pure hands and a pure heart.